Okay, the purpose of this video is to teach you how to integrate sources from any research that you're doing. So what this is called T paragraph structure, and it just teaches you how to introduce your sources and also explain them in a coherent way. Okay, so what does T stand for? T stands for topic, sentence, evidence, and analysis. So what T does is it starts things out with a sentence that previews the content of the paragraph or presents the main idea of the paragraph. After that topic sentence, you present evidence or examples that help provide detail to the topic sentence. So if you're using sources, it'll contain things like quotes, summaries, or paraphrases, which are introduced by a signal phrase. So that signal phrase, we'll get to those in a bit, that is one thing that really helps you present your ideas and create a clear barrier between your ideas and your source's ideas. And then you have, after you present your examples, you present an analysis and you describe how the evidence or the examples proves the topic sentence. You present your line of reasoning. So as far as proportion goes, some people like to talk about how many sentences there are in a paragraph, all those types of things. It really varies depending on the length of the assignment and how much detail you have to go into to explain it accurately. So the topic sentence should be one or two sentences. Make sure at the beginning of the paragraph you don't take too long to get to your example. So if you're going to use tea as a metaphor, this is the hot water of your teacup of your paragraph. So it sets the base. It's a basis of the paragraph. And then you present your evidence and your examples. So these will be from your sources if you're integrating research. Make sure that you have specific facts that you are putting into your paragraph. Think of this as the tea leaves itself, adding the tea to the water. If you don't have evidence or examples, you don't really have a paragraph or a developed idea, and it's just like having tea without tea leaves. It's the same thing. There's no point in writing if you don't have good examples. After that, you present your analysis. This is where you present you as the writer, you present your line of reasoning to explain the information. So this is why you make the cup of tea, is to savor it, to drink it. Analysis is the same purpose. It's the whole purpose of the paragraph. So after you present your sources, how do you as the writer explain that? What kind of reasoning and information do you use to explain the source? So first you start out with your topic sentence. This summarizes the content of the paragraph, or it creates kind of the promise of where the information of the paragraph is going to go. It creates focus at the beginning of the paragraph to guide the evidence. So sometimes when people start writing topic sentences more consciously, a lot of times we do this unawares. We present the main idea, present some examples and explain it. It's pretty logical. Sometimes people overthink a topic sentence and they write something like this. In this paragraph, I'm going to discuss how when a human pets an animal, it causes a chemical reaction in the brain. Notice how wordy that sentence is. In paper, we don't need to mention paragraphs or anything like that because the reader can already see what that is. So you want to aim for something less wordy that sets out to prove something. So say something like, petting animals causes a chemical reaction in the brain. So that's a much more superior topic sentence because it's clear and it sets out something to prove. It's a kind of a general statement. Petting animals causes a chemical reaction within the brain. Your next step is, well, what is that chemical reaction? And that's what the paragraph does. It goes into further detail and explains it. After you present your topic sentence, you need to present your examples. So these are vital since this is the evidence in your paragraph. So what you're looking for in examples are specific things, specific facts, specific stories and analogies. specific first-hand counts of information, specific numbers or statistics, specific relevant and reliable opinions, or specific definitions. So depending how specific it is, you may need to quote your information, you need to paraphrase your information, and you can even have a summary that's pretty specific in nature. But the whole thing is you're moving into specific information here. So here's an example of the example section or example or evidence section of a paragraph. We start off with our topic sentence again. Petting animals causes a chemical reaction within the brain. This reaction is a result of the hormone oxytocin, which creates what Meg Ulmer describes as, quote, a bond woven from the same stuff that merges mothers and infants. So we can see here how our example is a quote here. You can also have paraphrases for an example too. But notice what we do before this is we point out the source, Meg Ulmer describes as, and then a quote. This is what we call a signal phrase. We're going to talk about these later. So after you present your example, you present some analysis within the paragraph. Basically, it answers this question, so why is this information important or relevant? So here's some strategies. Comment on the accuracy or inaccuracy of the quote, fact, data, or information. Decipher the meaning to try to better understand your observation, findings, or experience. Elaborate on the example with a final example or analogy, or discuss the effects or consequences addressed in the example. So going back to our sample paragraph, petting animals causes a chemical reaction within the brain is our topic sentence. This reaction is a result of the hormone oxytocin, which creates what Meg Ulmer describes as, quote, a bond woven from the same stuff that merges mothers and infants. That's our example. And then our analysis is, oxytocin is a hormone that bonds both males and females to their offspring. It triggers feelings of love and contentment when touched or hugged by a friend or family member. So when animal lovers call their animals their kids, on a chemical basis, they're not far off. Notice those analysis sentences just explain that example further. They flesh it out, give some more original examples to make it make sense to the reader. The other thing you want to do is you want to use signal phrases. What signal phrases do is they clearly distinguish between your ideas and your source's ideas. And so they are essential because they prevent plagiarism. When you use signal phrases consistently, there's no question on whose ideas are whose, because if there's a question on whose ideas are whose, you can get into territory that substantiates plagiarism. So in our sample paragraph, it was this phrase, Meg Ulmer describes. So notice to mention the author or the source. Now, the one thing about a formula like T is you want to make it sound natural, and one way you can make things sound natural is by switching up placement, and this really comes with signal phrases especially. One signal phrase you may be familiar with is according to this person, or according to that person. But according to is a fine signal phrase, but if you use it for every signal phrase, your writing sounds very repetitive and it doesn't sound natural. So one thing you can do with the signal phrase is vary where it falls within the sentence, especially with quotes. So you can see here we have the signal phrase at the beginning of our quote. Meg Ulmer describes it as, quote, a bond woven from the same stuff that merges mothers and infants. You can also cut the quote up and put the signal phrase in the middle. The human-animal bond, quote, describes Meg Ulmer is woven from the same stuff that merges mothers and infants, so you can introduce it that way. You can also, if you're using a quote or it's a very clear paraphrase, you can put the signal phrase at the end. It is, quote, a bond woven from the same stuff that merges mothers and infants, describes Meg Ulmer. So varying where those signal phrases fall is a very important thing to do. It just leads to cleaner writing, less repetitive writing. There are a lot of signal phrases out there too. You want to vary the verbs you use for a signal phrase, so you can say the author acknowledges, adds, admits, addresses, argues, asserts, believes. You can read that chart for yourself, but the whole idea is use your thesaurus, use your vocabulary to vary what those signal phrases are so they sound natural, so they don't sound repetitive. Okay, so a recap of T. T consists of a topic sentence with an example introduced with the signal phrase and analysis. What this does is it clearly defines whose ideas are whose, it introduces sources, it presents sources, and it explains sources. That's what we want to see as teachers when you're using sources. We want to see how your ideas are supported by research and how you're able to explain those ideas.